All right, what I'd like to do in the next few moments is I want to go through about 138 different influences from the very bottom right through, I'll come to you in a sec, right through. And in doing this, my interest is not on any one of them. Obviously, each one of them is critically important, and quite frankly, if you want the details, every good library can go into the details in the book. Everyone is done. Some do have moderators, most don't. The details are not my interest today. My interest is how I can build a case of what's up there and what's not down there. All right, I'm going to mention some because I want to paint a story. I'm going to start off with retention. This is where the opposite, where you take a kid in year 4 and at the end of the year you make him do it again. And I say he because 80% of the people who are retained are boys. Of the 207 studies, the 2,675 effect sizes, the average effect size is minus 0.16. Now I, in a previous life, was an expert witness in a Supreme Court case in the US on retention. And it was taken by a group that was arguing that it was very discriminatory for African Americans because about 70 to 80% of kids that are retained happen to be African Americans or Latino. I know those 2,675 effects very intimately. If there's a single study that's ever been done that shows that retention is at least even 0, let alone positive, it's yet to be published. It's probably the most systematically negative thing that we do in education. Now that's the effect on achievement. When you add to that the equity issues, you've got to seriously ask, why do we do it? And one of the things that interests me about many of the things at the bottom of my chart is they are the most discussed things in education that don't work. And so I've explored many of these in much more detail. For instance, on retention, the first question to ask is who wants it? The kids don't, parents don't, it's the teachers who want it. And when you ask them why, their argument, I think this sums up the problem, their argument is a more problem. If I had that child for more time, I could fix him. And then you turn around and say, but wait a moment, you had the child for a year and you failed, and now you're going to give him the same curriculum, the same kind of teaching strategies, the same kind of peer investment, the same kind of, you name it, and you're going to fix the problem that you couldn't fix in a year? What that kid needs is not more, he needs different. And we've got to get over this notion that we think that teachers who work with kids, that all they need is more time with that teacher, particularly when they failed that kid in the first time. And this philosophy of more pervades too much of our system. And you're going to see that for most kids, what they need is different. I'm not going to raise too many others at the bottom end of my charts for the very simple reason, this is a strong message and not meant to turn you off, but if you want to debate things that I put the point for, quite frankly, you should be in another room, not wasting my time. That's the strong message. The real message I'm making from that comment is that you'll see the bottom ends of my chart, most of the debate in education, in the policies and in the staff rooms, are about the things that don't matter as much. Number 125 is one that Pat Alexander and I are working on at the moment because it deeply worries me that teacher subject matter knowledge doesn't matter. And we are looking very closely at why it doesn't matter, and we're coming up with a very simple reason why it doesn't matter. Under most conditions in most classrooms, the level of instruction is so surface level and low, there is no need. Can it matter? Yes. And our article is about the conditions under which it matters, and I'll come back to that. The biggest manufactured crisis in education is the gender one, boys and girls. Over literally almost 3,000 different studies, the effect is still slightly in favour of boys. All of you who are in teacher education should shake in your boots about 121. And for me, who is also in teacher education, I think it's deeply concerning that we have, amongst our teacher educators, the most evidence-free people in the world. So it's no surprise to me that their teachers are also evidence-free. Gosh, this is fun. We've just got to the 0.15 stage. A lot of the things at the bottom of the chart are what I would call the structural things. How we group kids, how we throw money at kids, how we build schools, charter schools, all these kind of... Yes, all these are positive, but they're trivially so compared to the ones that really matter. And this is the ones we spend all the big dollars on. Thank you. It's, I meant to pick, it's the opposite. It should be the lack of illness. Because, and the biggest moderator there is it's not a direct effect, it's these kids just don't go to school. No. Homework's one I want to comment on, because homework's one where there is quite a lot of variance. Homework in primary school is about affects, the overall effect size is 0.3, the effect in primary school is close to 0.1 to 0. The effect in high school is much larger. Homework, particularly longer than an hour, is negative. Homework that is not surface level, as opposed to deep level, homework that's surface level is much more effective than homework that's deep level. And it should make sense to us, because if kids need to be deep and they don't know, they usually need a teacher. I'm going to come back to homework later on as to how we can use it, but I certainly would have been saying in our primary school sector, don't get rid of it, even though it's close to useless. Because most parents judge the quality of the teacher by the amount of homework they get. So make sure it's no more than about 5 to 10 minutes. Make sure it's about something that kids have already learned and it's another chance for them to practice something they've learned, and make sure it's something they can do. Some parents are very good at helping kids with homework, but if you want to keep spreading the distribution out between those who have and those who don't have, then why should those kids whose parents can't help them with homework be disadvantaged yet again? So I think homework's one that I want to be very cautious about, because in secondary school it does work. But let me also comment that there is no evidence that homework relates to the success of kids' study skills. You don't learn to study by doing homework. You learn to study by being taught how to study in the school. And as parents, saying to our students, go into your room and study, for kids who can't do that, it is a very destructive thing for them. It's another reason to explain to them why they can't learn. Homework that's actually done at school is much more effective than homework that's done at home. I want to comment on 74. One of my colleagues, Vivian Robinson, has done a lot of the meta-analysis in this area, and she has contrasted principals, school leaders that, in her language, instructional leaders, compared to principals who are what she calls transformational leaders, the ones that worry about the school culture, having common goals, and trying to get a collegial atmosphere amongst teachers. Now, in some ways it's a bipolar, so it's not necessarily a good reflection, but it's a very interesting way of dividing up the effects of school principals. Remember, this is on the effects on the kids. The ones that have the strongest effect on the teachers tend to be the transformational leaders, but the ones that have the strongest effect on the kids, dramatically so, is the instructional leaders. Now, I want to put that in your head, and I want to come back to that one also. We finally got to point 4. So we're going to start and get rid of a lot of the structural things that we throw the millions of dollars at, and how we paint our schools, and all that jargon about choice, which really means school choice rather than kid choice or parent choice, to start getting into the things that matter. Now, a lot of the things at the top part of my chart are in the hands of teachers. But please remember, a lot of the things in the bottom of my chart are also in the hands of teachers. And I certainly don't want anyone to leave the room thinking that I'm saying that teachers matter, because that is not my message at all. All right, let me start to build a story here. Let me start at number 43. Many years ago, I had a student who did a meta-analysis on the effects on people's self-concept. She actually looked at children and adults. And across all the different programs that affect people's self-concept, what she found was that the most effective by a mile were outward bound programs. Now that particular thesis had 2 major effects in my life. The first is I then decided to spend about 10 years working with the outward bound people to understand what they were doing, and spent a lot of time at their courses and working with their people and doing lots of research projects, and this is when I was in Australia. The second kind of relates to how I opened today's speech, The thesis was so good, that was the student I married. It's been wonderful 25 years. But looking at the Outward Bound programs, it kind of sums up what is the model to me of the effective teacher. How many of you have rappelled, abseiled down a building or down a mountain? Put yourself. I'm going to invent a brand new game. I'm going to call it soccer, and you've never played or heard of it in your life. And I'm going to take you out into the fields here at the university, and I'm going to ask you to play the game. I'm not going to tell you what the rules are, and I'm not going to tell you what success is in scoring goals. Can you imagine the chaos that's going to happen out there? That's exactly what we ask most of our kids to do in every classroom on every day. Just do it, and if you succeed, you'll get more of it. And if you don't succeed, you'll even get more of it.